BBC Newcastle. Radio for the North East. The Evening Show with Tamsin Robson.
You're tuned into the Evening Show with me, Tamsin, here with you on your Monday night, 10 past 10. Stay tuned, got lots of great music on the way for you. But every weeknight here on BBC Newcastle, we bring you the best the North East has to offer from the creative individuals around the region. And tonight, we are hearing from two women who are making a political statement and aiming to bring people together through the power of music and dance. Tonight we're hearing from Katie Doherty and Esther Huss. Now they're both from creative backgrounds, and it was Katie's song Bridges which brought the ladies together for a very exciting new collaboration. Now Esther is originally from a small town in Germany, but after living in London for quite a few years, she married a northerner and found herself living in Northumberland and loving life. She says she absolutely loves the North East. The ladies came in to have a chat with me because they're working together on a project called Bridges. And I wanted Esther to tell us a little bit more about it.
So the European dance project is called Bridges Dance for Europe, which really started with coming across Katie's song Bridges and really falling in love with the lyrics and the spirit behind this song. And I felt at that time, with everything that is going on in the UK at the moment, really excited about contributing something towards this, maybe this voice of division that is going on at the moment. I really wanted to use my craft and this field of dance that I've been working in for the last 15 years to find a way to contribute something slightly different and slightly more unifying towards this. So Bridges started in the UK. So as you said, I've just moved to the Northeast. I've lived in the UK for the last 20 years. I became a British citizen this year, so I've got dual nationality.
Oh, wow.
And I sort of feel really passionate about this country. So for more than half of my life, I've lived in the UK and really care sort of about the UK very much. So Bridges began here and then travelled across the continent. So I started by inviting people on the streets and inviting them to dance with me for Europe. And I was amazed at the response I got. So people were very enthusiastic about joining in, about learning pieces of choreography, and that they would then perform with me on the streets. This was filmed and put together into a film that we are about to launch in December, so 4th of December at Alphabetti Theatre. Something that I think we learned is how much people want to connect, how much people really seek friendships and seek to stand together. And I feel there's something beautiful that happens when people from different backgrounds or different, ethnic backgrounds, ethnicities, religions come together, that it sort of poses a challenge to find common grounds. And I think meeting these people and dancing with all sorts of people, we really found that very quickly dance and music enables people to find this common ground rather than focusing on the differences between them. So Bridges is a project that highlights these human connections that exist everywhere, a very sort of natural desire to want to connect to other people, and gives the opportunity to celebrate that, how wonderful it is to be with other people that you may have never met before and to experience doing something together.
So Esther, how long have you been obviously been dancing for a long time? Was it something that you got into when you were a young girl?
Yeah, very much. So I didn't really want to dance at all. I grew up next to a forest in the south of Germany, and my mum had a friend in our village who opened a ballet school. She had no students, so my mum said, you need to become one of her students. And I really didn't want to at all. So the deal I struck with my mum was to attend 4 sessions, and if I hated it at the end of those 4, I wouldn't have to go back. And then really fell in love with it. So this particular teacher, who was English, Sue Carter, she would tell us stories and we would improvise to these stories. I was 8 at that time and really just discovered the joy of expressing through movement. I then carried on dancing with her until I was 17, and then decided to move to London to study dance professionally, and then focused on contemporary dance. So I've got a degree in theatre dance, but really specialised in contemporary dance and dance making. In London, I performed at big venues at the Royal Opera House. I worked with people like Michael Keegan-Dolan, Kate Flatt, Jackie Lansley, and then started making my own work and founded an inclusive dance company that really had this spirit of bringing all sorts of people together. So I think I was always really passionate about performing as well as using dance as a way to bring people together and experience this shared joy of doing something together.
Tonight we're hearing from the local folk musician Katie Doherty and German-born choreographer Esther Huss. Now, the ladies are working on a film called Bridges, which celebrates Europe, and though during this controversial time in our history proves that music and dance can bring people together regardless of borders and Brexit. And I wanted to know more about what brought Esther to the northeast of England.
Millions of things. I mean,
what I'm interested about is like every other city in the UK, but you chose Newcastle. So what was it about Newcastle that sort of stood out for you?
And it's not even, it's Newcastle, and then I live sort of 20 miles north of Newcastle in a tiny semi-peninsula called North Blythe.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got 3 streets, no shop, but an old workman's club.
So, polar opposites to London. Total opposites.
So what brought me here? I met someone who's from here, who also lived in London at that time. And we both wanted to leave London and live a more rural life, and had this opportunity to build a house up here. And I think, like, for me personally, there are so many similarities between Geordies and the village where I'm from. So what I find here is people are incredibly open, very generous, very chatty. I just felt at home as soon as I put my foot on Geordie land for the first time. And really just, I feel like this is for a long time, for the first time, I feel like I feel at home where I live, and people are just excited to meet and do stuff together. So it really, just the general sort of vibe up here really resonates with me.
And it's interesting, you say you've been here for 20 years and you now have dual citizenship. And obviously the UK is going through a bit of a turmoil at the moment, shall we say.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting what you say about the project, you know, building bridges, bringing people together and unifying people, and yet at the moment we can't really seem to sort of do that.
Yes.
As someone originally from Germany, now living in the northeast, even though you have dual citizenship, how does Brexit affect you?
In many ways and no ways so far. I mean, I really, like, personally, how I want to respond to Brexit is to just use everything I have as a way to connect people and sort of respond to Brexit rather than feel like a victim of it. But then, in practical, day to day, it's already flights for me to go back home 3 times as much. The reality of my mum sending a parcel to me is probably going to be a lot more expensive than it has been, you know, so there's all sorts. And then morally as well, like, it's just sort of, it's a shame that we're having to ask ourselves this question of Brexit or no Brexit, because I do feel there's many people out there who really want to connect and want to connect on a European level, who want to be part of this European network. So I think there's many sort of voices happening, and I think my wish is that this voice of connection sort of gets more at the forefront. And I think there are many people who want to work together and who want to think of themselves beyond their own country borders, culturally as well. I think it's really important that we do have these exchanges happening. And I think on an individual level, I think people shine when they're exposed to difference. So I really feel, just for that reason as well, I'm really pro-Europe, because I think it brings out good things in people when they're challenged with, you know, encountering difference.
I'm really upset because I buy French butter. It's already gone up a lot in the last. And this is just my day-to-day butter, because I love French butter. It's very good for your gut, apparently, because it's creamier and there's less water in it. But no, my butter has already gone from, it was £2, I think it was £2.5 for a pack. Now it's up to £2.50. So goodness knows what's going to happen after Brexit. I know I should buy British butter, and I've got nothing against British butter, by the way, but I like the French butter. Because it's got sea salt in it, and it's lovely and it's scrummy. Oh, I'm not going to lie, it's good butter, like. But you know what, I just have to make my own butter. So there you go.
BBC Newcastle. Radio for the North East. The Evening Show with Tamsin Robson.
Time for our final part of my interview with Katie Doherty and Esther Huss here on BBC Newcastle. So, inspired by Katie's song Bridges, the lovely Esther had an idea to work with Katie on a project which celebrates dance, music and Europe. Now, it's a film which took Esther all over Europe to film people dancing to Katie's song, and will be at the Alphabeti Theatre on Wednesday the 4th of December if you want to go and check it out. Esther is new to filmmaking but has lots of experience in dance, and travelling around Europe she got to meet loads of people and hear their stories. And though it's a bit of a controversial time for the UK and Europe, her film aims to celebrate everyone in Europe and prove how powerful dance can be and how it can bring people together. When the ladies came in to chat with me the other week, I wanted to know from Esther, do you feel that this is your response to Brexit?
Definitely. My response, and also sort of giving an opportunity to loads of people on the streets to join in and responding. I think it's really important to highlight this other undercurrent that I think is really strong in society at the moment. And I think it's nice to give that undercurrent a few opportunities to be voiced. And I think that our undercurrent is a celebration of these human connections that exist.
And when you were travelling around Europe, was it well received?
Yeah, like really surprisingly, because I think I started off thinking, oh, I'm really gonna have to convince people and sort of bully them into, like, come and dance with me now. But it really wasn't at all. I mean, I think dance is a really useful tool. It's such a natural thing for people to do, for many people to do, and yes, sometimes people can be shy, but I think if you really just show that it's about moving together, the choreography is really accessible. So I think as soon as people saw what it was and sort of the heart with which it was done, they wanted to join in. And then, like I said, just hearing that we were from the UK, I think some other European countries feel like they don't quite know what is the atmosphere like in the UK. So I think they really enjoyed meeting us as well, out of curiosity to hear like what are these young people doing and thinking about this whole Brexit idea. Yeah, so really positive responses and just nice stories as well. Like we met a group of carpenters, like really young lads, like 15, in a town in Germany, who I thought would, run a mile when you say, do you want to dance with me for Europe? And they really didn't. They were so excited about joining in, and then recruited some of their friends to join in as well. So we suddenly had this big group of young men dancing with us and in the middle of a Minster square. So it's, very sort of openly, and that was nice. So we met a group of 4 women, so 4 generations, a grandmother, her daughter and her children, 3 generations of women who joined in this dance. And it just felt incredibly moving to have these 3 generations of women dance together in Portugal. And then obviously asking people to dance with you sort of have to have a bit of a dialogue, so you really get to know people, and you have to have a conversation in order to then facilitate this moment of dancing together. I really enjoyed meeting people in this way as well.
So how did you guys come together?
So I'd seen Katie perform twice in the Northeast just after having moved up here, and then started listening to her songs and came across this song Bridges. Really liked the song and liked the lyrics, and felt it would be a perfect song to do something for Europe. So like literally just heard the song and felt this has to become something about Europe. And we'd never met before. So I just sent her a message and explained the idea and asked if she was happy to give us this song for this project. And she said yes, and it sort of happened from there. So we didn't actually physically meet until some of the filming had already started.
Oh, wow.
Which to me was extraordinary. And it also is something I really feel up here in the Northeast. This very generous spirit and an eagerness to collaborate. I really felt with Katie right from the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when Esther asked to use Bridges, it came out of the blue really, because that hasn't happened before, where someone's asked to use a song for something completely different. I'm quite often commissioned to write songs for specific events or things that are happening, but Bridges was a song from my first album, which I released 12 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
And it's the title track, and it's actually the reason that I got to record that album as well, because it won a songwriting competition, which the prize money I put towards making the album. So it's kind of a song very close to my heart, and I didn't write it with the project that Esther's done. It's not exactly what the song was written about, but it's just so amazing that it fits perfectly for what Esther's trying to convey in her project, and that's just brilliant. I mean, something that I really try to do with the songs is give them enough space that people can put their own interpretation onto it, and that's the best part of being a songwriter, is where someone comes up to you and says, I really resonated with that because, and it's got nothing to do with what you wrote the song about.
Yeah.
But it's communicated something to somebody. So I was really pleased that not only that Esther had seen this in the song, but also that I completely am on board with what she's trying to do. And I think music and dance and all art generally is about connections between people. It's about communicating things. It's about finding common ground. And folk music is quite often political. And I don't write political songs. I don't feel like I'm very articulate in terms of politics. But as we all know, in the last 3 years, everybody has become a lot more aware of what's happening and how it affects everyday life. And so I'm really proud to be part of this project that Esther's doing. I think outside of the politics, it stands on its own, this project. It's about the people rather than the politics.
I wanted to talk to Katie about her origins in music and where her passion for folk music came from.
Well, I suppose it started off with a passion for all music. I wasn't a folk baby, so there was lots of my friends who were in the folk world their parents took them to folk festivals their whole childhood and folk clubs, and I was always exposed to live music, but it wasn't necessarily in a folk club or a folk festival. I had an older brother and sister who were very into the Cranberries and the Waterboys and all that kind of indie sort of slightly left field stuff in the early 90s. So that's where I started off, and I just developed a love for really good songs. And it happens that there's a lot of really good songs with good narratives, good stories in the folk world. So that's kind of where my love of folk music began.
And what is it about folk music and culture that you just love so much?
Because it comes from the people, basically, because it's people-centred, it's real people, stories, and it's often about place as well. And I find that really interesting, how it's an oral tradition, so it's been passed down from generation to generation, but you can find the same song at the other end of the country, but just slightly different. So it's like kind of Chinese whispers, and people have shaped it according to what's happening in their town or village or street even over time. So that's what I'm really interested in telling stories, basically. That's where my passion comes from.
So for you, what came first? Was it learning to play music or was it writing lyrics?
Probably learning to play music.
What was the first instrument you learned to play?
Piano.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we had an old bashed up piano in our house, and I just sat down and bashed about on it a bit more, and just really enjoyed trying to work things out myself. I'm not amazing at the piano at all, even though I've been doing it since I was about 2.
But at least you try.
I try, and I just use it to accompany myself, so it's useful, it's handy.
One thing I found interesting when I was sort of doing a bit of research into you, you were one of the first people to graduate from Newcastle University with a folk degree.
I know, isn't that strange?
That's a really interesting degree.
It is, yeah.
I'm amazed that they even have something like that, but why wouldn't they? What was it like being one of the first people to finish that course?
It was very exciting, being the first year to do it, and it was the first course of its kind in England. There's a few around now. There's one in Sheffield, the one in Newcastle's still going. It's slightly different to when I was there, which is quite a long time ago now. There's one over in Helsinki, and there's one in Limerick, and then the School of Scottish Studies in Glasgow does a similar sort of thing. So we had a lot of opportunities to start off with. The people involved with the course, it was founded by Alistair Anderson, and then Catherine Tickell was one of our lecturers, Sandra Kerr, Katrina MacDonald, some amazing gigging musicians, and they were still gigging when they were lecturing us, so it was exciting. Yeah, it was great. And to be honest, I don't really talk about having a degree in folk music now. There is still a stigma that it's maybe not a proper degree, you know. So
I think as long as you get those letters after your name, you've worked hard, you've shown that you can commit, and you've shown that you can do the work, which is the most important thing. Folk music is your background, but it was actually getting into theatre that sort of perfected your craft, wasn't it?
Yeah, because theatre's all about telling stories, and so I think my drive for those types of songs was a good match for theatre. So and I sort of fell into it. I've been doing it for 15 years now. So
wow, that's brilliant. And that's how you met your bandmates, Shona and Dave, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, we did a musical produced by November Club, and it was written by brilliant Northeast writer Laura Lindo, and I wrote the music for it. And then we had a band, so Shona and Dave were part of the show band, and we discovered that we really enjoyed playing together. We'd known each other for years, but we'd never actually played in that configuration, and the Navigators were born.
Are you like the dream team?
Yeah. It sounds really cheesy, but yeah, it's a total pleasure to play with them. They're brilliant mates as well as phenomenal musicians.
That was a lovely Katie Doherty here on BBC Newcastle, radio for the North East.
BBC Newcastle,